a pleasure to be here. Before I started my talk, I just wanted to get a little bit of understanding of who we have in the audience, if that's okay. So I wanted to ask who's here is actually currently doing research. Okay, terrific. And who's involved in intellectual property and turning research inventions into intellectual property and patents? Okay, terrific. And who's involved in the administration and creating that context within the various organizations for research and intellectual property? Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. So this session is really focused on some market studies for patent licensing and looking at it from a perspective of commercialization. So being able to have the patenting be an integral part of the commercialization process and how that fits in some different approaches. So Zomix, my company, is a biotechnology accelerator and venture catalyst that was formed in 1998 and focuses on intellectual asset management, the creation of new technology startups, as well as strategic initiatives in technology development and commercialization. So today's talk is focused on optimizing the value of inventions, the definition of market areas in which patents have the potential to procure value and maximize revenue, market analysis tools and market references used to optimize the best pathways to target licensees, partners, or commercialization focus, and finally, approaches to creating revenue using a diverse licensing approach. And I'm going to provide to you a case study that will walk you through one diversified approach to development. So as it relates to defining the market, one of the key things is being able to define the market first with the inventor, because my experience is that inventors or scientists are looking at the answer to a particular question, and they are most likely the world's expert on that question. And being able to look at the answer that they've come up with from their perspective and their expertise often leads to, first of all, a network of relationships that they've built over their career that can be very helpful in understanding one is companies or collaborators or the kind of resources that may lead to commercialization. As well, it's also a good way to reach experts in the industry that may also be able to define other fields of use or areas of application that may be possible but not of interest to the initial inventor, but of value to other people. So the other is to focus on the claims and the scopes of the applications. So, you know, if you can determine where is the strength in the license based on the claims in the patent, and is it something that you'll focus on to commercialize, or is it something that may have value as a way of defense? And also, what's the freedom of use? Because if you have a new invention, but in order to commercialize it, you would require many other licenses from other people that may be so prohibitive of a hurdle for an initial startup cost, or it may not even be available because those companies don't have an interest in spawning competitors, that it may not be a good thing to pursue. And to look at the market demand and competition both through primary and secondary resources, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. So as it relates to IP management and IP analytical programs, all I can say first of all is that there are many IP programs that are out there for both how you manage your intellectual property and how you analyze the intellectual property that you have. And they have different features. Some integrate into your contact management database. Some of them will integrate into search engines that will help you find similar intellectual property, will help you understand other licensees of those technologies, some of the deal structures that have been done and comparable deal terms. So they can each yield different values. And so they will tell you the IP holders in the space, companies that have licensed. They will make recommendations for licensing partners and people that have synergistic IP. That's just a few things that can be done, but those are some that I thought were important to present as a primary focus. I went backwards. As far as market references, from a secondary reference, there's a number of industry reports that can be used. Frost & Sullivan is a pretty well-known industry source for market information. If you are part of an academic network, they will sell you a subscription at a fraction of the cost that they would to industry. And that also, if you're part of a network, it can often be shared and is good. The other that I mentioned here, because I have a lot of focus on biotechnology, is Cambridge Health Tech Institute. And I actually have written reports for CI in different market areas, and I launched their publication and reports from a sales and marketing perspective when I launched my company at the end of the 1990s. But there's other type of industry reports as well. Industry organizations, like for example in life science, there's the Biotechnology Industry Organization, which is an organization that I've been active in and founded my company through and have co-chaired their tech transfer committee. But that organization has an annual report that goes over the whole industry and is full of very valuable information. So other type of industry organizations will give you access to other information like that. Trade publications, business plans are always worth keeping because they will tell you in their competitive section around that technology who the competitors are, and as you look at other technologies that are like that, you start to become familiar with the companies that are in that market space, in that industry. Corporate documents is something that is very helpful and often overlooked. So if you look at a company that is publicly traded, you can go through Edgar to their 510Ks, look at their annual report, and you will find a lot of very interesting information about the deals they've done, the collaborations that they've created, the focus that they have for their research and other information. Now I'd like to talk to you a little bit about styles of doing patent licensing in a very basic way. The first is what normally occurs as a first phase of technology transfer, which I refer to as the push. So it looks like blast communication, online listing, and marketing brochures. So that's where you're really just trying to, throw it up and hope that somebody's going to catch it. The targeted push is really more through this marketing, but one-on-one interactions. So when I say CRM, that's contact research management. So, for example, if today you have been collecting business cards, what are you going to do with them? Some people will put them into a Rolodex. There are other systems as well. I used ACT for 15 years. It's a very good system. And then I transferred now to Outlook, but I use a product called CardScan. So all my business cards get scanned into CardScan. There is OCR that then takes that information, puts it into fields, and then it integrates into my Outlook, so that you then begin to have ability to also take notes, put people into various type of categories. When I set up the database for the Florida Institute, I met 1,400 people in that year and organized all of them based on whether they were management, whether they were investors, whether they were inventors, and so forth. Some of it is network-based, and the other is industry trade shows. Diversified licensing is looking at options for licensing and commercialization, and in a very simplistic way. That could be exclusive, non-exclusive. It could be in a field of use. It could be in a scope of use. It could be used to protect for infringement, or it could be done in reciprocation or in bundling of intellectual property in order to create a stronger company. I'd like to share with you one case study, and this is a company that I founded in 2002 based on a cancer cell line that is now being used to treat cancer, but also has been developed as a drug discovery tool called Conquest. So the product is based on a natural killer cell, and natural killer cells are the most basic part of your immune system. So there's two parts of your immune system. There's the innate immune system and the acquired immune system. And the innate immune system is what responds immediately to attacks by cancer or infectious disease. And natural killer cells work in a two-step process. The first uses an enzyme called granzyme to poke holes in the cells, and the second uses, or porphyrin to poke holes in the cell, and then it uses granzyme to degrade the contents of the cell. And so I had, as an entrepreneur, established cell therapy as a new area for a company that is now part of Lonza and formerly was known as Cambrex. And I was in ongoing conversations with both industry and academic scientists doing research in cell therapy. And I noticed that in the cell therapy development pipeline there was a gap. So what you needed to do in order to be able to attract capital was reduce risk and increase the value. And there was a point at which the work was being done internally, and there was a point at which it was potential for investment, but there was a gap. And so I determined that much of the work that was coming out of the industry was being done initially in trials in academic centers, and if that information could be licensed out, we could escalate the development of the company and leverage the clinical development. So this product had been tested in 2 trials in the United States and Europe. There were master cell banks that were prepared, and that was significant because a master cell bank is about $100,000 a piece. There was assignment of the rights to the invention from the inventor, and there was really 1,000 publications, but probably at least 150 that I would say were really relevant. So we had a platform cell line, the ability to universally administer it for cancer. We had scalable production, a final frozen product, and the people that serendipitously I had engaged were the discoverer of natural killer cells, Ron Herbermann, and the person who ran the first clinical trial for cell therapy, Michael Lotz, who did that with Steve Rosenberg. So I didn't validate it by what the inventor said, I validated it by going to the best people in the world around that type of technology and asking them, do we do this? And so Ron Herbermann is on the board and Michael Lotz is on the scientific advisory board, and then they got engaged. Now, as far as the commercialization goes, with early stage companies, the best kind of money is non-dilutive. So in this case, we have $4.5 million of research from a variety of different sources that are non-dilutive. One of the first things I did was ask for a copy of every grant application, because the information in the grant applications was as valuable as the data that came out the other side. And today, Conquest has a full pipeline of clinical products in development, and a lot of progress has been made in being able to use this product. We've treated 50 patients in phase 1 trials. In the most recent model, we've been treating patients as outpatients on multiple cycles of treatment, which has never been done in a cellular therapy, and we've had complete remissions in a number of the patients. So the other things that are important are collaborations. So we have worked with the Blue Cross Blue Shield in Frankfurt regarding production for a targeted and genetically modified cell. We've worked with a company who I cannot disclose for a very large license with royalty to use the platform as the basis for their clinical product development. We've worked with UHN and received a grant, and they are now developing scale-up technologies. And then we have licensed area of use to a Korean company that wants to use this technology to treat cancer in Korea. The Nuco panel system is different than the clinical use. The product had been reduced to practice at another academic institution. They contacted me. So what we did is I had my team write the patent, and we wrote it both for the clinical use as well as the ability to do drug screening. And then began a platform of licensing with Big Pharma to use this as a way of being able to both screen for products and then use them for quality assurance and quality control. Today we've done about 30 deals with Big Pharma that has been a very strong revenue stream on an ongoing basis, because the licenses are then paid on both upfront fee and annual renewal fee, and then much higher fees as those products go into production and approval, and when the technology is used for quality assurance. So in summary, leverage existing clinical data and expertise, leverage academic and commercialization grant funding, license in additional clinical data and intellectual property, license out as a platform for non-competitive therapeutic products, license out territories in non-target global markets, license out for drug discovery as an assay system. And the benefits are non-dilutive funding to support target clinical development and increase corporate valuation for the attraction of diluted funding. So, every particular scenario around commercialization is different, and each has to be analyzed against both the intellectual property, the resources, the market opportunity, and what are possible pathways for being able to achieve the creation of value and the attraction of funding. So this is one case I wanted to present to you because it's very familiar to me, but the point is that it's not just one thing. It was really looking at a variety of different opportunities that were available to create resources to add value to the company that was formed. And it's always very interesting as, I have come here. I have two technologies that I've been working with, which I had taken off because there's not enough time, but one is a biofilm that is being used to remediate water. It pulls out all of the sulfur and contaminants. And that is a very new and unique approach, and it's been developed by the father of biofilm. And the other is a revolutionary slotted liner that's being used to drill oil, and currently we are assisting a company in applying for a new scope of funding called ARPA-E, which is through the Department of Energy. They've created something equivalent to DARPA with very high levels of funding. So I know that we are short on time. I want to just say that as a final conclusion, there are many approaches to licensing and commercialization as there are technologies. The keys are start from what you know, gather as much as you can from what you don't know, and be open to opportunities you haven't considered, because things show up all the time if you just stay engaged and present people what it is both that you have and that you're looking for. So thank you very much. I appreciate it, and I'd be glad to answer any questions afterwards.